Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever felt the ground shake unexpectedly? Maybe even if you don't live somewhere like California, a typical high-risk zone. Because back on May 10th, 2025, there was this 4.1 magnitude earthquake near Greenback, Tennessee. And it did exactly that.
Right, it caused quite a stir.
It really did. Rattled homes. People felt it as far away as Metro Atlanta. We saw reports like a resident in Braselton, Georgia, described her ceiling fan shaking for about 10 seconds.
Wow, yeah.
And another Atlanta resident felt a sudden jolt that made my windows rattle. I mean, for folks in the Southeast, that must have felt really out of the blue.
Absolutely. A real wake-up call for many.
So today we're taking a deep dive into this surprising seismic activity. We want to unpack what earthquakes really are and, maybe most importantly, how you can be prepared. Doesn't matter where you live.
That's the key. Preparedness everywhere.
Exactly. Our mission here is to arm you with clear, actionable knowledge. We've pulled info from, solid sources, the U.S. Geological Survey, ready.gov, recent news reports. The goal is to get you from just knowing about it to actually being ready. Active readiness.
Moving beyond just awareness. Good.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me. That Tennessee quake, it wasn't just a one-off tremor.
No, seems like part of a pattern.
Well, as we looked through the data, it seems like it. There's been this string of recent seismic activity, and not just in the usual spots. We're talking across the U.S. and even globally. Like July 3rd, Alaska, 4.1 magnitude. July 1st, California, 3.5, but really shallow, just 0.1 kilometers deep.
Very shallow, yeah. That can make a difference in how it's felt locally.
Right. And then more in Alaska and California in late June, plus a pretty significant 6.1 magnitude quake over in the Philippines on June 27th.
So a lot happening seismically.
It really makes you wonder, are these just random events or is something more going on?
Well, what's fascinating, especially with that Tennessee quake, is how it sort of challenges our assumptions about where earthquake risk actually is.
How so?
You see, the East Tennessee Seismic Zone, where that May 10th quake hit, it's actually, according to Dr. Mark Pearson, a seismologist there, one of the most active zones in the eastern United States.
Really? One of the most active? That seems counterintuitive.
It does, doesn't it? So while it felt unusual to residents, the science actually points to that area having a history of activity. It's just maybe not as frequent or as large as, say, California.
Okay, that's a crucial point. We heard from a retired FBI agent near Knoxville, Jason Pack. He mentioned that, East Tennessee deals with tornadoes, floods, but earthquakes feel unusual.
Exactly. That personal experience versus the underlying seismicity.
So if the zone is active, why the surprise? Is it just the infrequency, or are people maybe not noticing smaller shakes?
It could be a bit of both, but it really highlights that risk isn't just in the places we typically think of, and, how these quakes are felt plays a big part too.
Ah, right. You mentioned something about the geology.
Yes, exactly. The geology in the Eastern U.S. is different from the West. It allows seismic waves to travel much further, more efficiently.
So a smaller quake feels bigger, or at least affects a wider area.
Precisely. Even a moderate quake can be felt over a huge distance, impacting more people, which probably adds to that feeling of it being unusual when it happens.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so let's talk numbers. We hear 4.1 magnitude. What does that actually mean in terms of power? It's easy to confuse magnitude and intensity.
It is, and it's a really important difference. Magnitude measures the energy released right at the earthquake's source, its epicenter. An earthquake has only one magnitude. Think of it like the wattage of a light bulb. It's fixed.
Okay, one number for the source energy.
Right. And the scale is logarithmic. It can even go into negative numbers for tiny, tiny quakes. There's no theoretical upper limit, though the Earth's structure imposes practical ones.
Can you give us a feel for the scale? Like, what do different magnitudes translate to?
Sure. Anything 2.5 or less, usually not felt. Millions happen every year. Then 2.5 to 5.4 often felt, maybe some minor damage, about 500,000 of those annual.
Okay. Getting bigger.
Right. Then you hit 6.1 to 6.9. These can cause a lot of damage, especially in populated areas. We see maybe 100 per year globally. And then 8.0 or greater, those are the great earthquakes. They can totally destroy communities near the epicenter. Thankfully, those are rare, maybe one every year or two on average.
Got it. So that's magnitude. What about intensity then?
Intensity is different. It measures the shaking at a specific location. It's about what you feel and the effects you see.
Like the rattling windows in Atlanta.
Exactly. It depends on your distance from the quake, the local ground conditions, building type.
Yeah.
Lots of factors. We use the modified Mercalli intensity scale. For that, it describes effects like, dishes rattling, pictures falling, or even heavy furniture moving or structural damage.
So one magnitude, but potentially many different intensities felt.
Precisely. That 4.1 in Tennessee might have felt stronger, say 100 miles away, than a similar 4.1 in California would at the same distance, because of how those waves travel differently in the east.
Okay, that really clears things up. Now, I think a lot of us have this feeling. Are we actually seeing more earthquakes lately? Especially in that sort of moderate 4 to 6 magnitude range that feels like it?
Yeah, that perception is definitely out there. But the sources we looked at suggest it's more likely due to a couple of things. One, we just have better detection networks now. We record more smaller quakes we previously would have missed.
So better monitoring.
Better monitoring, and maybe, as the USGS suggests, just paying closer attention, or that it's part of the natural fluctuation in earthquake rates over time. The Earth's core isn't doing anything unusual.
What about things like the moon or planets? Do they influence earthquakes?
That's a common question. Earth tides. From the moon's gravity, you might have a very tiny correlation, but it's negligible for prediction. Other planets. Their effect is basically zero. You certainly can't reliably predict quakes based on celestial alignments or anything like that.
And do small quakes relieve pressure, maybe preventing bigger ones?
Not really in a predictive way. The relationship is super complex. Sometimes you get foreshocks before a larger event, but often you don't. A swarm of small quakes doesn't automatically mean a big one is less likely, or more likely, unfortunately. The Earth is just constantly adjusting.
Okay, so the risk isn't just California or Alaska. We've established that. What does this mean for, the rest of the country? Places like the Southeast, the Northeast?
Well, this ties directly into the latest National Seismic Hazard Model from the USGS. It was updated in 2023, and it's a pretty big deal.
Why is that?
It's the first time they've done a comprehensive assessment for all 50 states, looking at all the latest science on faults, ground shaking potential, everything, and the findings were quite eye-opening.
Don't leave us hanging. What did it find?
It found that nearly 75% of the U.S. could experience potentially damaging earthquakes. 75%.
Wow. That's way higher than I would have guessed.
Right. And it specifically notes increased potential in areas we might not traditionally think of, like the central U.S. and along the Atlantic coastal corridor. Think northeast and mid-Atlantic cities.
So it's really redrawing the map of risk.
In a way, yes. It's refining it with much better data. It reinforces that this is a national issue. Consider this. 37 U.S. states have had earthquakes bigger than magnitude 5 in just the last 200 years.
37, okay.
And this new model, it identified nearly 500 additional faults that weren't fully accounted for before, faults capable of causing damaging shaking.
So our understanding's constantly evolving.
Absolutely. As Mark Peterson, a USGS geophysicist who led the study, put it, this model is a touchstone achievement for enhancing public safety. It's about understanding the hazard better so communities can prepare better. It's not prediction, it's assessment.
Okay, the science is clear then. Earthquakes are unpredictable. They can happen pretty much anywhere, and they give zero warning. Which brings us, I think, to the most crucial part of this deep dive. How can you, listening right now, empower yourself? How can you and your family be prepared?
This is where knowledge really becomes power. Preparedness is all about resilience, individual resilience, family resilience. And here's maybe the most critical insight from the safety guides. The biggest danger isn't usually the ground shaking itself.
Oh, what is it then?
It's falling objects, things coming off walls, shelves toppling over, light fixtures, parts of the building itself collapsing. That's what causes most injuries and fatalities.
Yeah, that actually makes preparedness feel more manageable somehow, if it's about securing my environment.
Exactly. It shifts the focus to things you can control. Many hazards are preventable with some foresight and action.
So what are the key steps? What should people do before an earthquake?
Okay, let's break it down. First, secure your space. Look around your home. Fasten heavy things like TVs, bookcases, mirrors to the wall. Store heavy or breakable items down low. Maybe even anchor things like your water heater. You don't want that breaking loose. Do an earthquake hazard hunt.
A hazard hunt. I like that. What's next?
Second, practice, drop, cover, and hold on. Know it, practice it with your family, your kids. Drop to your hands and knees, cover your head and neck under a sturdy table or desk, and hold on until the shaking stops. It sounds simple, but muscle memory in a panic is crucial.
Drop, cover, hold on. Got it. Seems fundamental.
It really is. Third, have a plan A family emergency communication plan. How will you contact each other if you're separated and local phone lines are jammed? Designate an out-of-state contact everyone can check in with.
Good idea. And a meeting place.
Yes, definitely plan a meeting place nearby if you can't get home. Fourth, your emergency kit. This is vital.
The go bag. What's essential there?
Think self-sufficiency for at least 72 hours. But Ready.gov actually recommends aiming for 2 weeks if possible. Services might be down for a while.
2 weeks. Okay. What goes in it?
Essentials are water about a half gallon per person per day, minimum, just for drinking. Non-perishable food, avoid salty stuff that makes you thirsty. Flashlights and extra batteries. A good first aid kit and a manual. Maybe a fire extinguisher. Class ABC covers most common types of fires.
Right, makes sense. What else?
Any special needs items, medications, glasses, baby supplies, pet food, sanitation items. Tools are good too. A pipe wrench or crescent wrench to turn off utilities if needed. A whistle to signal for help, important papers, some cash, and definitely a battery-powered or hand-crank radio.
That radio seems key for getting information when power's out.
Absolutely critical. You can find really detailed checklists on Ready.gov tailored to different needs.
Okay, what about the house itself or finances?
Good point. Fifth, think about the bigger picture. Does your standard homeowner's insurance cover earthquakes? Usually no. You likely need a separate earthquake policy. Look into it. If you're in an older building, maybe consider a seismic assessment or retrofitting.
And utilities. You mentioned a wrench.
Yes. Finally, know how to shut off your main gas, water, and electricity switches. But, and this is a big, but only turn off the gas if you smell it, hear it leaking, or see the meter spinning wildly, and you know how. Once gas is off, only a professional can safely turn it back on. Don't do it lightly.
Okay, that's a really comprehensive list for before. What about during the shaking? Panic sets in. What's the absolute priority?
Priority 1, hands down. Drop, cover, and trop. Hold on, just do it. If you're in bed, stay there. Pull the covers up, protect your head with a pillow. Less chance of getting hit by falling debris or stepping on broken glass.
Stay in bed. Interesting. What if you're just elsewhere indoors?
Stay inside until the shaking stops. Seriously, do not run outside during the shaking. That's when things are falling off buildings. Most injuries happen when people try to leave a building while it's still shaking.
Okay, stay put. Drop, cover, hold on. What if you're driving?
Pull over, but do it safely. Find a clear spot away from buildings, trees, overpasses, utility wires. Stay in the car with your seatbelt on until the shaking stops.
And in a high-rise.
Expect fire alarms, maybe sprinklers. Stay away from windows. And absolutely do not use the elevators. Take the stairs once the shaking stops and if it's safe to do so.
What if the worst happens and you're trapped?
Okay, if you're trapped, try not to panic. Don't light matches or lighters. Try to signal rescuers. Send a text if you have service. Bang on a pipe or wall periodically. Use a whistle if you have one in your kit. Cover your mouth with cloth to avoid breathing in dust. Try not to shout too much. It wastes energy and you could inhale dangerous dust.
Got it. Signal, conserve energy, protects your airway, and then the shaking stops. What are the immediate next steps?
First thing, expect aftershocks. They can be strong enough to cause more damage, so stay alert.
Right. It's not necessarily over when the first shaking stops.
Exactly. Then, check yourself and others for injuries. Provide first aid if needed. If you're in a damaged building, get out carefully as soon as the shaking stops. Move away from the building. Don't go back inside until authorities say it's safe.
What about tsunamis if you're near the coast?
Huge point. If you're in a tsunami zone, immediately move inland or to higher ground the moment the shaking stops. Don't wait for an official warning. The earthquake itself is the warning.
Okay. What else in those first minutes, hours?
Try to keep phone lines clear for emergencies. Use text messages or social media to check on people if you can. Put on sturdy shoes and work gloves before you start walking around, or cleaning up broken glass and debris are major hazards.
Shoes and gloves, good tip. And checking the house.
Yes. Carefully check for hazards. Smell for gas. If you smell gas, open windows, leave immediately. Shut off the main valve outside if you know how, and report it. Don't turn lights on or off. Don't use phones inside. Sparks can ignite gas. Look for structural damage, cracks. Check for downed power lines. Assume they're live. Safety first.
Wow. This deep dive really underscores it, doesn't it? Understanding earthquakes isn't just for folks on the West Coast anymore. That Tennessee tremor, the wider risk map, the Earth is active. And really, your preparedness is your best line of defense.
It truly is. And perhaps this leads to a final thought, maybe a question for everyone listening. Since we know most casualties aren't from the ground shaking, but from falling things and building failures. How can we, as individuals, as families, as communities, really weave earthquake safety into our daily lives before anything happens? How do we make securing that bookcase or having that family plan just normal?
That's a powerful question. Making preparedness a habit, not an afterthought. It's about taking that personal responsibility, equipping yourself. For listeners wanting more detailed guides, those checklists we mentioned, definitely check out ready.gov/earthquakes. The FEMA app is also a great resource. Stay curious, everyone. Stay informed. And most importantly, stay safe.